Hi, it's Scott Newcomb with Zenvi AI, and welcome to the Systems Are Sexy podcast. Today, we are joined by Natalia Kim. She is the founder of Home Incentives Hub. It's a platform using AI to make home and building sustainability incentives as easy as clicking a button. Her mission is to democratize access to programs that help property owners and multifamily operators retrofit, maintain, and future proof their buildings, something that's never been more important in our changing climate. So, welcome to the show, Natalia. How are we doing?
Thank you so much for having us. Pretty great so far.
Okay, great. Well, I love hearing from people's journey and how they got started. So, could you maybe talk about why you started Home Incentives Hub and what problem you're trying to solve?
Yeah, sure. I actually started with a problem. I like several years ago, about like maybe five, six, about 9 years ago, I bought a summer house in Long Island and I started fixing it up. And I realized that it's not easy. And when it comes to like renovating your home or just in general, just talking to people, my friends, my neighbors, most people don't really know when it comes to their homes what to do. And so basically, not only they don't know what to do, but also how to pay for all of that. And as you know, like buildings, if you think about actually, buildings contribute 40% of pollution emissions. And we all know about climate change, right? I'd rather not say climate change. I would say extreme weather events. And by that, I mean like most people think about, okay, you know, the climate is getting warmer, and I think that most people get confused because in some parts of the world, it's not warmer, it's actually colder. And in some parts of the world, it's hotter. And so, really, we're talking about extreme weather events when we say, well, yeah, the planet is getting warmer. And so, what it means that if we used to have like one extreme weather event, like, I don't know, once in 100 years. Now it's like almost every other year or even every year. Like, look at what happened with the US this year, right? How many, like, look at New York. New York had so much snowstorms, like, so much snow this year. It's insane. And how many people died because of the cold? Because so it's coming and it's going to get worse. And what we want to do is we want to prepare. I mean, I know it sounds kind of cliche, but but we do want to prepare. And basically, what I realized is that the problem is that people don't know how to prepare, first of all. And second, even if you do know, or rather, if somebody tells you how to, what you need to do to prepare, the next big question in construction or like in the built environment or whenever you talk about buildings in general is, hey, how do we pay for that, right? Because anything that's like, okay, I'm not even talking about building develop like multifamily units or anything like that. I'm talking about like single family homes. Like you have a home and you need to replace a roof, for example. Guess how much it costs, right? And if a person like has a mortgage on a house, like 30 years or I don't know, 15 years or whatever, they usually don't have that additional, you know, budget to replace a roof or replace their insulation or whatever. Like if they live in that house for 10 years or like 15 years, you know, they're just making their payments or whatever. And they are, I don't think most people have funds set aside to pay for new roof or new windows or new doors or insulation. And that's what you know, that's what you need because as you build something, it starts aging. And if you think about it, like in the US, I know a lot of people in the built environment like to talk about new construction, like new homes, energy efficient homes, and things like that. But the truth is that majority of homes in the US, and by that I mean not just, you know, homes that are owned by people, but homes that are rented by people, like renters also, like, you know, there we have a huge population that rents. And so those homes are older. And so at some point they need to be, you know, things need to be replaced. And how do you do that? Especially if you're renting. So there isn't much flexibility when it comes to rents. Like when you are renting an apartment or a house, you can't really replace a window, right? It's really up to your landlord to do that. But would they want to do that? Probably not. And so as I was fixing my house, I realized how hard it was to actually do that. And at that point, I had no idea. I worked in finance. And so I didn't know anything about renovating a house. In fact, I feel that most people don't. And, as I was hiring people, I realized that when people saw that I was fixing the house, they would come by and knock on my door, and would start selling me stuff like, all kinds of things. Like, everyone wanted to do something on my house, place my chimney, like all kinds of things. And so that probably happens to a lot of people. So unless you're like in construction or you know how to fix your home, you're literally, at the mercy of people who are in the construction industry, who are doing that type of stuff. And so as I was navigating that, I realized, look, there is not like it's really hard to find a way to help people. How can I simplify that? And actually that during COVID, it's kind of like COVID happened as like I was finishing up fixing the house. And I was also finishing up my program at Harvard Extension School where I was literally focusing on green buildings. And so I was talking to my professor, and he was telling me how he was, his house was like built in 1900, and he didn't know, you know, how to fix it or how to find labor, reliable people who could come and fix his house. And that was another issue, right? And so I realized how many things that could be fixed and what I could do to make the entire process simpler and more streamlined. And so I started out with HomeDop, or rather like a solution, a platform to help people who had homes, right? And so as I was trying to work on that idea, I pivoted. As you know, entrepreneurs pivot multiple times, right? And so because when you start out with this huge idea, it's really hard to kind of like, and as I was navigating this space of startups and talking to a lot of startup founders and people, luckily I am in New York, and it's like one of the best places to be in if you are in the startup industry. And so it gave me a lot of resources in a way that, I went to a lot of events where I met people in VC industry, in construction industry, people who are building their like second, third startup or whatever, something like that, right? So I talked to a lot of them and I realized, wait a second. So I have this grand idea about helping homeowners or like people with homes um, to renovate or make their homes more sustainable. And then I realized, wait, if I want to build something, I need to start smaller. I need to narrow it down. And so as I was talking, and by then I met actually somebody at the Harvard Club in New York. I met my technical person. In fact, it's a duo of brothers, and they are building their own startup. And so I talked to them, and they liked my idea, and they came on board. And basically, we're currently building it together because they said, "Look, the thing is that extreme climate events are happening, and they are coming our way. People are just not, people are not prepared. And if I think everyone is just kind of like waiting for things to happen, and maybe because they are not sure what they need to do. But since we already know and we have the skills, I said, look, let's start somewhere and build something that could help people to transition into more sustainable future where at the push of a button, they can get, and that's what we're tackling first, right? They can get access to something that has been until now has been available to companies, or rather companies that have budgets for experts who find these incentives, energy incentives, grants, all kinds of different programs at the federal, state, private level. And that's something that exists. In fact, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. But because most people and even like smaller companies, they don't have that budget or they don't have money to hire that expert, right? They're missing out. And what could have been, an easier way to like buy a building, fix it up, use those money, like incentives money to help offset the cost. Something like this is today is available to larger companies. And so this is what we're trying to change. We are basically trying to democratize access to something like, building incentives at all the different layers. And in fact, I was thinking about how to explain it so that regular people can understand it better, right? And if you think about coupons, like grocery coupons for food, and so you go to like all these different stores like Walmart, Costco, and things like that, and they all have these flyers, right? And so people actually collect and look at them, but there is no one single database where you could like say, hey, I want to buy milk. And then I put this milk in search and then like, hey, Costco sells and this is how much it costs. And this makes most sense for me to just like go to Costco and buy a gallon of milk because it's the cheapest and it's like the same quality or whatever. And so this is what we're building. We're building, and the reason why we're building this is because, with the advancement of AI, and another thing is, I forgot to say that, and I'm sure you probably saw this in the news, how the cost of electricity for people has skyrocketed, right? Like, I don't know what's going on with your electric bill, but mine has gone up a lot, and I know this has been happening across the entire country. One of the main reasons, I mean, obviously, it's also because it's driven by the weather, where, if in New York we had extreme cold and like snowstorms like nonstop for I don't know for how many months. Obviously, that's going to drive up the electric bill. But it's also because of the data centers that AI is driving, and obviously we're not I think we will continue seeing that, right? So, and in fact, US is one of the, we have the largest number of data centers in the US today, right? And I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. And that's going to impact the cost of electricity even further. And so, what do we do? Because we're talking about, okay, so if you're just on a salary and you have so much for your mortgage expenses every month, and then you have so much allocated to your food, and then to your heat, and then your electric bill and stuff. So if that's going up, what do you do? And so this is where we come in, right? And our platform, and we've been testing it out with companies right now, but actually I've been saying to everybody, everyone we've been working with, that our platform is going to be free to homeowners or renters. And so if you're like using just your home and just trying to find incentives for your home, then there is really no charge for that. It's going to be very easy for you just to go to the platform, push a button, find all these incentives. And in fact, another thing that we're building is not just finding incentives, but also helping you. So the application process is another thing. So I would say it's not like, you have to apply to get these incentives. And I don't know if you've ever applied to get anything, but it's pretty honors. Like when you're trying to get into college or something, it's kind of similar. Like you have to send out all these applications and just make sure that you don't miss. Because I spoke to somebody who used to approve incentives for New York City. And he said, the biggest issue with rejections was, like in his particular case, that was like missing information. People somehow just don't answer all those questions in the application. And that's like something that apparently is a huge thing. And I said, well, yeah, but then this is something that AI can fix, right? You're basically saying, well, okay, so, and this is what we're trying to build, where we are, and that's something that I wanted to emphasize, that we are keeping humans in a loop. Meaning you will be in charge of your application. However, based on all the stuff that you provided previously, that information is going to be pre-populated into the application. So there's a lot less room for error. And so you will be basically, you'd be able to apply more, and you will have access to all the applications being tracked in the system so that you won't forget. As soon as it gets approved, you'll know and will get notification that you got approved and things like that. So, and it's literally because there is a lot in the news, there is a lot of kind of like people get scared that AI is replacing people, right? And so in our case, we're not replacing people. We're literally using it as a tool. We're building a tool for people so that they can access something that exists, that's out there, but not easily available due to like a myriad of reasons, like maybe people don't know, or they don't have time to apply, or they don't know how to apply, right? And there's like all kinds of reasons why people don't apply. And so we want to kind of like make it super easy, like the Amazon push button. Remember how they, I don't know, they got rid of that actually. But it's like literally you know, if you like one brand of cereal and you want to order it on Amazon, you just like push that button and it just like oops and it's delivered to your house. And so we want to build something super simple, really easy to understand, and you know, encourage people to actually apply and get that money to help them with pretty expensive upgrades. Because you know, and another thing that I wanted to mention is that when I talk about incentives is that I'm not talking about replacing your like, I don't know, replacing your kitchen, for example, or like fixing your bathroom. But we're talking about insulation or your roof, or your heating and cooling systems, right? Something so, you know, important for the house, making sure that the envelope of your house is tight, but not too tight. Because people always like to say, oh, let's make it super tight. But no, the house has to breathe. That's important. And that's where ventilation comes in. So the importance of ventilation is paramount when you talk about healthy living spaces, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to create environment sustainable and healthy so people can come home and recharge, you know, be comfortable and prepare for their next day. And this is why we're building this.
Okay.
So
All right. That's a lot to take in. Thanks. You're obviously passionate about this. I'm wondering, as you start to grow, how are people finding out about you right now?
yeah, so you know, we incorporated in July last year and we built a pilot, first focusing on New York State, New York City. And so, interestingly enough, I started telling everybody in my network about what my, you know, idea was for this company. And I met somebody in that network who also finished a program, sustainability program at Harvard. And he's currently actually, they're based in Indiana. And so he's been literally our first customer who literally works, he's a chief sustainability officer at a medium size, I would say, builder or a developer, a company that buys up distressed buildings and fixes them up, makes them sustainable. And so this is something that they are passionate about. And so from day zero has been instrumental in how we shape a vision for our company, what we want to build and how we're building it. And in fact, actually, our pilot was in New York, but our second state that we added in like probably end of last year was in Indiana. So because, you know, just because first of all, he's been extremely supportive. And so I just want to make sure that everything, they actually have buildings in like about 10 states, I would say, but a lot of them are in Indiana. And so I just wanted to make sure that our first customer is super happy with what we're building. And so we added Indiana then, and then we added New Jersey, like probably like in January. And so as we're slowly working with customers, I am literally, I don't want to say we are, you know, growing very fast. We're not. In fact, I don't want to grow fast because for now we are working with, I would say, companies and people who are industry experts, like people who've been doing it full time. And they're based in like different states. Like some people are in Virginia, some people are in Colorado, and some of them are working for large builders. One of our companies that we're working with is actually a pretty large company that has multifamily units, commercial, residential, real estate in like 30 plus states, including New York. And so they have funds to have like experts on a team, right? And so we are working with people like that to help us understand what would be the best way to design our platform so that companies like that could find it useful, right? And so as we're building it together with experts who will be using it or who are using it right now, testing it out, these are like our beta customers today. We will slowly approach large players in the market as we grow and also as we're adding states to the platform. So my next one is probably gonna be like California, Texas, Arizona, maybe Massachusetts, states where there is a lot of, you know, construction and incentives as well. So like it's also about, yeah, if a state, if because at the federal level, programs, incentives are kind of like, the same. There's a lot of change right now, especially like with the new administration. There is a lot of change happening at the federal level. So our focus right now is like, okay, so how the states are responding, right? And what private companies are doing. If there are private incentives, then how people can find them, how people can access them, and plus, how do they find state incentives and just literally like maximize access to what still exists, still available, and so that people can tap into that. And also, obviously, as we are keeping this platform free to like regular people, not companies, but regular people who don't care about privacy, just to say, like, if I have a home, I'm already, I don't care about privacy in terms of I want to find as much information about incentives for my home, right? And it doesn't really matter whether I am looking for incentives for my home or not, because nobody is gonna like, who cares? But if you're a company and if you're like using incentives for a new building, or rather, like, let's say you want to purchase a new multifamily development somewhere, like, let's say in Arizona, right? And you want to understand, okay, so this is the cost. This is how much it's gonna cost to buy. This is how much cost it is gonna cost to like fix it up. That's where it's important. You don't want to tip off your competitors, right? You don't want to say, "Oh, I'm looking at this property. I want to know exactly how much it's gonna cost to fix it up." No, you don't want to do that. And so this is where our sort of like behind the paywall a platform comes in and say, yeah, you can actually use our platform to figure that out. Like you don't need to every time you want to buy a property, you don't need to go to an energy consultant who will charge per property to find okay, so how much is it gonna cost to fix it up, put it on the market. And so that's what we're basically designing, like people who are investing in real estate, commercial, residential, people who actually manage real estate, right? So if you're managing something and you just want to know, first of all, at what point do you want to replace all your lighting, for example? Like if there is a program that like pays for, I don't know, like 50% for replacing for your lights, like helps you to replace all your lights. Yeah, why not? Like do it right now, right? Or if there is a program that helps you replace, like in New York right now, there's like a huge program where they're actually helping people replace their dryers. And there is such a thing like a dryer that's like a heat pump dryer. I had no idea there was such a thing, but I was like researching programs and I'm like, like in New York, there is this, I'm sure you heard about that, LL97, right? Have you heard of that? It's like so it's like first ever like requirement for buildings that are like above 25,000 square feet to meet certain carbon emissions. So basically a building, I live in a condo building that's like mixed use. And so the first floor of our building is commercial. So basically we have like a whole bunch of shops and everything above is like residential, right? And so the thing is, it doesn't matter if your building is 100% residential, if your building is like mixed use like mine, the city looks at the entire building together, and it basically tells you, okay, for your building, I'm giving you this many like credits, carbon credits. And if your building exceeds that, for every credit that exceeds that allocated amount, you will be fined. And the fine is going to be like a little less than $300. And so, but the thing is that, yeah, but if your building is already, and in my case, for example, our condo building is like 95% uh, already used up of that allocated carbon credit. And so we have very little room left before that those fines start kicking in. And so we've been really thinking about what do we do to reduce that the load, right? And so I was researching programs to say, hey, so we can obviously replace all our lights, like replace in the common areas, but what are you gonna do when it comes to like individual apartments? Like people, I mean, you can obviously ask people to replace all that because a lot of them still have halogen lights. Like in my apartment, I have everything LED, but most of my neighbors don't. And so what do we do? Like, because at the end of the day, we as a building will be punished if, somebody doesn't care. They have halogen lights or use a lot of electricity for whatever reason. And so I've been looking into these incentives for the building. And I realized that New York as a state, New York as a city, they have these great programs where they help people to transition. That transition still requires funding. So even if they pay, like, let's say, 50% of the cost, you still need to put up that other 50, right? And so some buildings today are thinking, well, if they need to replace their heating and cooling system, it's like millions of dollars. How do you do that? And so I hear that some of them entertaining paying the fines, but it's kind of like makes no sense to me because, buildings who can't afford to become more sustainable or reduce their electric load, they will be punished for that. They will be fined. But it's like going down the rat hole because they already don't have money, but they will be fined to what? Non-existence? And those who can afford it, obviously, like I'm pushing my building to do quite a few things. We're looking at replacing insulation on a roof. That's expensive. Or we're also looking at fixing our windows. Again, that's very expensive because we have aluminum windows and basically no insulation around them. Floor to ceiling, this is very pricey. And so, but the thing is, it basically means that if the building can afford it, because the people in the building who live in the building or like the company who manages the building has funds to make those buildings more sustainable and meet those LL97 requirements, they obviously will win, right? But there are so many buildings that don't have that. What do they do? And so basically this is where I see, well, yeah, so if New York City Accelerator tells you, yeah, you can use energy experts, for example. But the thing is, if the building doesn't have funds, hiring energy experts costs money, right? And so that eats into your funds that you already don't have. And you would rather spend on, I don't know, fixing your AC, for example, or whatever like you need to fix. And so that's when I think, well, yeah, so your building can use our platform. Just sign up, push a button, put your address in, and then ask AI, hey, what do I need to do? This is what my building profile is. And then, talk to it. And it will give you some ideas and programs that can actually help you pay for all of that. But
That's
honestly, like I think it's gonna be just a tool for everybody with the building.
great. And where do people go to find out about you guys?
So right now we obviously you found me on LinkedIn, right? So we have a page on LinkedIn. We're very small, so and that's why if you want to learn more or like talk to me about what we're building, actually become a beta user, feel free to chat me or reach out to me. Happy to talk, to show, to demo. And so yeah, like and we also have online like a website. I mean, you saw the We just redesigned our landing page. So just reach out to me whatever way. Like you can email me or message me on LinkedIn, and we can go from there.
Yeah, what's the website so everybody can take a look at it?
So it's, let me see. It's basically www.homeincentiveshub.com, and maybe you can just share that, right? You can share it maybe in your when you post it, right?
Yep. Well, thanks to you, Natalia. We really appreciate you being on the show today.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.